sportsradiodetroit.com.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Tigers SRD. Roger is still across the pond in London. He will be back next week, but don't worry. Still have another great show. Chris Brown is joined once again by Bless You Boys staff writer and editor Brandon Day. The guys will take you the rest of the way this week, getting into topics and probably talking about if the Tigers are going to sell, which we all hope they do. Hopefully you guys have a good time, and here's Chris and Brandon.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. It's the SRD B team. It's Ben, Brandon, and Chris Brown. And Roger, of course, is still hanging out with Rebel Wilson or whatever. So we got another week of Tigers talk and baseball, and I don't know. We're going to talk about, I think, the recent losing streak. Everybody's talking trade potential. I think we're going to touch on a little bit on what the Tigers would need to do to avoid selling at this point. And, do some minor league talk, and especially the futures game, which I'm way into. But, so, Brandon, how's it going?
Hey, pretty good. Yep, week 2 of my residency here. Yeah, having a good time. It's been kind of a crazy week. I actually haven't seen that many Tiger games over the past week. Been busy with school and work and running amok and stuff, and I'm told I haven't missed all that much.
Well, I mean, bad baseball.
Yeah, I did still see some bad baseball, yeah. I did manage to catch some bad baseball. It wasn't that hard.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is probably all these late West Coast games.
Yeah, that's true.
Only one of those games is at a reasonable time. I think it was the last game in San Diego. Yeah, which they did win, I believe.
Yep, they did pull that one out. It just kind of that losing streak just really puts it into relief. I mean, things look real bad now, but you kind of look like if they had kind of split against the Padres, done okay against the Mariners. I guess split against the Mariners. Yeah, this wouldn't look that bad, but it still wouldn't look that good. But I mean, it really feels like they pretty much put themselves right on the brink. And I don't know if the last 2 days are enough to change anybody's opinion about that.
Well, yeah, it goes to show how frustrating this team is. You see, Fulmer just absolutely dominant today for 8 2/3 innings at least, and you saw a little bit of vintage Verlander the other day where, he had a really rough first inning, but after that, it was just cruise control for the most part. I mean, I guess he was a little iffy for the next couple innings.
Yeah, but even then, that first inning, there was like 2 hard hit balls and then a bunch of just kind of bloopers that dropped in on him, which, he has a tendency to have happen to him with all the fly balls. But
yeah, and that was like vintage Kansas City Royals baseball from the last couple of years too, just swinging at everything and hitting in play somehow. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so you see that, you see Cabrera hit a home run. You see, who else hit home runs? Upton crushed a homer. Kinsler hit a home run. You see the potential with this team, but it's just, bragging about a 2-game win streak at this point. It's they can't get anything going. Daniel Norris goes out there and looks fine for 3 innings, and then the wheels completely fall off.
Yeah,
and that just sort of feels like the way this team is. They're capable of long losing streaks, as we've seen. I'm not quite sure if they're capable of long winning streaks.
Yeah, there just always seems to be that letdown, even in the midst of a good performance. Somewhere along the way, things seem to go haywire, and they just kind of can't put it together. They can't put the facets of the game together all in the same kind of stretch of games. I liked Ausmus coming out and talking about, exit velocity and, how many barrels and all this kind of stuff, the team had hit. Because we've been writing about that since April. I've been telling everybody since April, like, hey, just wait, this team's gonna rage. But I think what that also, kind of spoke to was that, the offense still really isn't the problem. I mean, to a degree, they're more inconsistent than you'd like. But, if people watch, other teams in the Tigers, they'll see that, I mean, that happens to almost everybody. It's not just us, apart from maybe the Astros. So, yeah, we just continue to seem to put up like, somewhere between 5 and 10, per night. But
if you're pitching against the Orioles.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just, it's the pitching staff to me more than anything, and that just kind of continues to be the theme. They just cannot shut teams down, when they're allowing 2 or 3 runs a game with any consistency. So until we see that, and Norris is a big part of that because I mean, we don't really have any options for like a third type starter beyond him at this point. It's a bunch of 5th starter candidates. And he just hasn't been able to get it going, and it just, kind of keeps going back to, his fastball command as much as anything, just falling behind guys, not throwing first pitch strikes, and then having to come in there. And Sal Perez just lit that one up, the 2-run shot.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it's part of we talked about it last week. I think guys aren't complete. Guys named Michael Fulmer aren't finished products when they come up to the majors. And even Fulmer, we joke about him being so poised and so good, but it took him 5 starts.
Yeah, he was still a little rocky for those 5 starts.
Yeah, and that was one of the funnest things about today's game, of course, was him breaking out the curveball that I've been wanting him to throw all year, just because everything he throws is so hard.
Yeah,
it's not like he's having a ton of issues, but the scouting reports when he came up, he would throw the occasional curveball, and he threw 2 or 3 today, and they looked pretty damn good.
Yeah, they really did. I hadn't. I remember reading that he had one, but yeah, I'd never seen it. I kind of figured he just kind of scrapped it along the way, and to see him kind of, we were kind of joking about, well, what's the spin rate on this thing on Twitter, but it was a nasty looking curveball. It really did look pretty good.
Yeah, I'm not sure when I think we might be able to find that out tomorrow, but maybe not. I don't know if you can break down on Baseball Savant by pitch.
Yeah, you can. Yep.
Oh, well, fantastic.
But do we need to? That was kind of the joke. Is that it looked good. You can pretty much bet.
I need to, Brandon.
I'll be that guy. I guarantee I'll look. But I don't need that to tell me it was good.
No, absolutely. Yeah, that was dropped off the table, and so that's that's just icing on the top of Fulmer, who, boy, he's every bit the ace, it seems like at this point. Maybe a couple more strikeouts, but he generates so much weak contact, and it seems to be a skill with him. Like, he does it deliberately. So.
Yeah. Actually, I wanted to talk about that. There's a lot of Tiger topics we can get into, but since we already hit on Fulmer, I was just talking with a guy on our site, and there's a lot of people who will still kind of make that, fielding independent pitching argument that if he doesn't get more strikeouts, this isn't sustainable. But you look at, a 50% ground ball rate. You look at the 3rd lowest hard hit rate in the game. You look at, I think he's got like an 11 or 12% infield fly ball rate off his fly balls. More and more, I'm seeing that as we can kind of track those things. Fielding independent pitching is better than ERA, certainly, but it's starting to be a little bit, undercut by the fact that we can kind of measure contact a little better now than we used to. And I don't see any reason why, people should be real concerned that he's all of a sudden going to start giving up a bunch of home runs. And because the strikeouts aren't there, it's not going to work for him. I just think, we've kind of reached a little bit different time where if you really want to go deep, you need to go deeper than that, because there are guys, especially the better pitchers in the game, who do seem to be able to manage contact pretty well. I started getting into this and getting yelled at by people with Verlander, back in like 2015 when I was telling people, listen, you got to look at that infield fly ball rate. Those are as good as strikeouts. You got to kind of add that in. He's controlling that. He's getting those outs himself, basically. So.
Yeah, and you're right. That was that was back when Matt Cain was pitching really well. That was one of the things with him. His ERA seemed to be beating his FIP by like a full run every year, and everybody's like, "What? This doesn't seem sustainable." And yet he kept doing it.
Yeah, some guys do it.
And we actually, we talked to Casey Boguslaw earlier this year. He does the barrel FIP. Yeah. And there is the promise that Statcast will be able to help us refine that FIP a little bit more, where you say, because they've talked about it, where they just do an expected weighted on base percentage based on the contact the pitchers are giving up.
Yeah.
And with that, that really gets it down. You can see guys who really do excel at getting weak contact. And obviously, like Clayton Kershaw is at the top of the list.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like he's not just awesome because he strikes out a ton of guys.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't see fluky guys up at the top of those lists very often, or at least not sustainably over, multiple seasons. So, yeah, I've been looking at like ex-WOBA and some of that. It's pretty interesting to check those out and compare them to the kind of the more traditional versions.
Yep. So we've coming off a week of mostly awful baseball. As we said, the losing streaks do wonders for people, for the fan base that say we have to sell.
Yep. They bring clarity, right? Losing streaks bring clarity.
But as we look at it, we're not trying to be Pollyannish here. I don't think this is going to happen. But if we want to try to project a possibility for the Tigers to get back in this, just in case, we've sort of seen the beginnings of it. You take 2 of 3 from a team above you.
Yeah.
It's going to take a lot more than that. but they do have 7 games against the Indians in the next week and a half.
Right. And
So,
the Indians aren't that impressive this year, and even now that they've started, kind of starting to separate themselves, that's still not a team that is scary the way they were last year. You look at the starting pitching, and they've got some holes there that they didn't have last year, and some of the guys like Kipnis aren't having that good a year. Santana, having decent years, but it just it just shows you, that when a team just goes bananas and wins, 95 to 100 games, and you kind of can't see where it's coming from, a lot of times it goes away the next year.
Yeah, no, that was sort of the Royals 2 years in a row, and then it's gone. But
it's all the manager, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yoasted.
Yeah.
So yeah, they've got 10 games left before the All-Star break. What are they? Are they 9 or 8 games under 500 right now?
Yeah, they're 8.
Obviously. So the best way, 7?
7 games back of the Indians. Yep.
Yeah. So the writing's pretty much on the wall. But let's just, for fun, let's say they win the next 10 games.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. You're back at it.
Yep, you are. You're right there.
But it is. I mean, it's 7 games against the Indians, and then 3 against the Giants, who may be even more disappointing than the Tigers this year. Probably.
Yeah.
Although I'm not sure. Well, I think a lot of people thought that they might be a wild card team.
Yeah, I don't think anybody thought they were going to take down the Dodgers, but yeah, I mean, it's because it's the Giants, you're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. So
yeah, losing their ace wasn't great, but so that seems like a beatable team, especially at home. Sorry, yeah, I mean, let's say they go 5-2 against the Indians and win the series against the Giants, so they go 7-3 in their next 10 games. They're still 4 games under 500.
Yeah, they'll be close. Yeah, they'd be a couple under. Yeah, but there's still a long way to go, of course.
Yeah, obviously, like I said, I'm not trying to be Pollyannas here. It's what they would need to do. Even still, you have to wonder if they would pursue trading. It seems like that's what they want. Alavila came out and said, "Hey, we're open to it. I'm just not going to pursue it," or whatever, which is very strange.
Yeah. I can't tell if some of that is as much for the kind of the fan base to just kind of tenderize us and get us used to the idea, because he said this, he made such a big show of it last offseason, we're open for business and blah blah blah. But he should also kind of follow that up with we're not trading people for we're not going to give away these guys. Yeah, exactly, for your 20th best prospects.
Well, and I wonder a little bit. In my head, I was thinking, maybe he's coming out and saying that, but he also doesn't want the players to just quit.
Yeah,
he's saying,
tough.
"Hey, we're open to it, but we're not pursuing it. So you guys keep playing better."
Yeah, it's a tough line he's walking. I mean, they got themselves into this, and not entirely his fault for sure, but they're just in such a weird spot because the Central and really, the American League in general, apart from, the Astros, like we keep saying, nobody's really that impressive. And the Tigers aren't going to be able, more than likely, I mean, we can talk about the Verlander rumors, but they're probably not going to come out of the trade deadline that different a team. I expect JD Martinez to be gone, but I don't know if you're going to get enough good offers for Alex Avila or some of the other guys to really make it worth your while, Justin Wilson, Shane Green, I don't know if you're going to get enough to make it actually worth bothering trading them away, because if you're still, not that far out of it, everybody will tell you, and I'll tell you, oh, you give up JD Martinez, you're probably toast, but, even if you aren't already, but, you're still kind of going to be hanging around, you're not going to be so devoid of talent that your team is just going to fall apart. And I think, without being Pollyannish again, you look at the Tigers and they've underperformed the talent on this team by a substantial degree. It's perfectly fine to say, hey, the Tigers were probably a 500 team, but, to say the Tigers are legitimately a team that should finish 74 and, whatever it is. I'll do the math real quick. 88.
90, 88.
Yeah. I don't think that's accurate either. And so they're going to be in a weird spot where, they could actually kind of manage a mini run if the rotation kind of gets going in late July, August. That's going to make it kind of retroactively look weird that they sold to some people. I don't know. It's a tough. I mean, there's the there's the perspective of those of us who, follow prospects and kind of know how all that angle of the game works. But, for a lot of fans out there, they're going to look at this like, yeah, the Tigers, caved, and hey, maybe they should have stayed in it, especially if, the Royals and the Twins, finally start to show the cracks that they've really got in the roster right now. So yeah, it's such an odd season. It really is.
Yeah, to a certain extent, I could see something a little bit like what happened with the Yankees last year, where they were still sort of in it, but they decided to sell.
Mm-hmm.
They traded Andrew Miller and they traded Aroldis Chapman, and they got a boatload of talent for those guys.
Yeah, and then they brought up Gary Sanchez, and he hit all the dingers, and all of a sudden,
yeah. Now there's no Gary Sanchez unless they bring up Kristen Stewart. He just decides to not strike out or something. I mean, I only say that just because of the power, but
yeah.
But yeah, it's a thing where I could see them trading away these guys and still playing about the same level of baseball.
Yeah.
Based on the sort of talent that will still be around. Presuming that they don't, they can't trade Upton.
Right, or Verlander, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if they trade Verlander, I think, okay, you're pretty much cashed in there because you got Fulmer and a bunch of, big old question marks coming up after him. But
yeah, so
I've kind of been looking at Verlander like the bellwether, like that's going to tell me where this team is going to go. Not just this year, but next year too. Because I don't know how you feel about this, but I can see the rationale behind trading Justin Verlander, certainly, especially if you're really convinced like the Tigers can't retool this thing and they really need to break it down. But if you're trading Justin Verlander, I pretty much think you're toast until you start getting guys like Burrows and Funkhauser like coming up. I mean, you're really looking at like 3 years before I think you've even got a shot again. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know. It's going to be tricky to see how that goes.
Yeah, and we had this discussion sort of at Tigetown. It was one of our like roundtables. Was what if you could trade Miggy and Verlander? Would you or do you? To me, I just don't think Verlander. Cabrera is tradable at all.
Yeah, I mean,
and Verlander, I think you can trade him, but you really have to, I think, get a great offer.
Yeah,
something. I don't think it can just be saving money. That's in the worst kind of message to the fans.
Yeah, and you've only got, he's only got 2 more years after this, and then an option. The odds that you're going to get prospects back for him that are, I hate to do it this way, but like let's say Verlander's worth 8 WAR maybe the next 2 years, maybe 7, something like that. That's a pretty reasonable estimation, I think, the way he's throwing the ball, despite how his results have come through. But you're not going to get that. You're not going to get that back in most deals. You can give us, everybody's looking at the Cubs like, are we going to get Eloy Jimenez and like another good prospect and Alberto Amora and this kind of thing. Like even if you get that, there's no guarantee that that's going to add up over the long haul. And you're pretty much punting it at that point. So you better be able to trade Ian Kinsler. Then you better be able to slip all Justin Upton if possible and trade him for whatever you can. It just puts there's just that pivot point around Verlander to me where if you somehow manage to deal him, you better get an amazing haul. And you also better have a way of, divesting yourself of everybody else, because having an extra $28 million to spend, the next 2 years, that doesn't do anything for you. Does anybody want to see El Avila sign any more long-term contracts? Probably not.
No. Yeah. I mean, you're right. It's sort of are you gonna commit to losing? Because you're not going to replace Verlander with somebody as good or better for cheaper. So, assuming he doesn't completely fall off the map, but.
Yeah, and you never know, but
yeah. So, and again, I am like the ultimate pessimist when it comes to prospects here because number one, it's like my mantra that prospects aren't worth nearly as much as people think. Fans always think, this prospect, no way, he's a top prospect. But at the same time, I feel like the Tigers players won't get as much prospects as people think. So
yeah. So it's like a double whammy. And I'm the same way, I'm interested in the minor leagues, I'm interested in the draft and following all this, but by the same token, like you just see, if you follow it closely, you just see how many guys in the top 100 just never do anything, like, never even make it for more than a cup of coffee, and I think there's a tendency as people in Tiger Town start kind of looking at, what does a rebuild look like? What does it look like to build from within? I don't think people are remotely prepared for the frustrations involved in, trying to bring up a whole bunch of young talent and hope that they pan out, because, at least, 50 or 60% of the guys that you really love, like this guy's a lock, those guys will be nothing, and trying to get a star out of the other guys is still a crapshoot. So,
yeah, think back to Jacoby Jones's first 2 weeks this season. Like, hey, wait a minute, maybe this guy, homer off Quintana, he's playing good D.
Yeah.
And, then you can't do anything for the next month. That's what you'd get, but like times 8.
Yeah. All these guys who they come up, they have a little flash, and then they get figured out, and you see like, oh, this guy is nowhere close to ready.
Yeah, because I remember when I first really started getting into prospects, probably a dozen years or so ago, and there were like a ton of guys who were in the top 10 back then, like guys like Brandon Wood and Andy Marte, Jeremy Hermida.
Yeah,
these guys,
vaguely familiar name.
Lastings, Millage, all these guys who were like top 10, look like legit can't miss guys, and they all missed.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite cases is Delman Young. Young, when he was 21 in AAA, hitting like 330 with 20 homers and 30 steals, like he just looked like a can't miss absolute stud. And
people were talking about him as like, the next like Cabrera or Pujols. Like that's the level of like this guy is that kind of hitter. He's going to be a game changing, franchise building bat to build around. Nope.
And we even look at Justin Upton. He was the number 1 overall pick. People thought he could be the next like Ken Griffey Jr. Just a stud, and he's turned out to be a really good above average player. But this is it's a crapshoot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean he's 30 now, and he's only had I think one season where he was above 5 WAR. He's just been a steadily good player who kind of does everything reasonably well and hits for power. But
yeah, he's an all-star, borderline all-star every year, but it's not the superstar that you hope and you dream you'll get with the number 1 pick. It's still obviously a very valuable player who gets $120 million contract, whatever. Maybe it's not the best example, but it's just to point out that these you can stock up on prospects all you want. Not everybody's Cody Bellinger and Corey Seager. Stupid Dodgers.
I know. Can we get some of that front office in here, please, God? I'll keep Alavila all day if he would just like replace some of his front office staff and get some fresh thinking in there.
Well, I'm pretty sure wasn't his dad a scout for the Dodgers? Yeah, come on.
Yeah, Ralph back in the 60s. He's got to know people over there.
Do us a favor.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. And you know what? There was a hearty discussion on Twitter today about what's going to happen with Alavila. I'm trying to think. I don't keep track of general managers that often, but I can't think of many times where GM got canned within 2 years.
Yeah, me neither.
Obviously, when the quote unquote new owner takes over, everything's. What? Was that porno?
I don't know what that was. It was not me, I promise you. There are no women anywhere near me.
So, yeah, but Chris Ilitch was there definitely as a part of, what his dad was doing. So I think he's probably well versed with Avila. It's not like he's gonna. Yeah. This isn't my guy.
Yeah, that's the thing is, it's how much of a new owner do we have, and I don't think it's all that much of a change, at least not yet. Maybe he'll take some time to kind of do some research on his own, kind of figure out where he wants things to go. But in the meantime, I'd be shocked if he fired Alavila. I know our buddy, Mark Garage is convinced, it's all over for him, but I don't see that happening at all.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, it's kind of like a poor little rich boy situation where Avila. He came in with this team that's got he's got $200 million payroll to play with, but 140 of that is locked up and he can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And so he made some moves. He did what he could with what he had. Upton and Zimmerman. I think some of us. Upton's fine. I think maybe some people wanted Cespedes instead, but he's been injured, and I haven't looked, but I bet you they're about similar. Well, I don't know. Cespedes was pretty good last year, and Upton had that rough stretch. But anyway, I think that's a little bit of a wash. The Zimmerman one doesn't look great in retrospect, but again, there's still some time.
Yeah, and I wanted that one. That's the one I can't really rip him for because I was feeling like don't sign two guys who are like really mediocre. Like get one guy who's good and let Norris, Boyd, and Fulmer work their way up. Slowly. I was wrong apparently.
Well, yeah. Again,
that happens.
Zimmerman's been better. He got roughed up a little bit in his last start, but the slider seems to come back. We went to his really good start.
Yeah. We went 8 innings. Yeah, 2 runs.
Yeah, and I'm not closing the book on him yet, but it does. The first moves do look bad, but I don't know if you can kill a guy. I mean, I don't think these are moves that were so out of left field. You're like, what in the hell?
Right.
I mean,
I think you have to look at what was needed. What was needed right then. I mean, he had to get a backup catcher. He added 3 relievers. A left fielder, a fairly top shelf starting pitcher, a back end starting pitcher. I mean, to go into an offseason like, we're going to contend. We just need to fill these holes. And there's like 8, there's like 8 of them, and 3 of them are like, expensive pieces. And, that's just kind of madness that they went for it there. And, when you do that, you're going to miss on quite a few usually.
Well, yeah. And you got to remember what he was coming in. He's coming in from Mike Ilitch, apparently very upset that the Tigers couldn't go for it in 2015.
Yeah.
And so,
which is also a form of madness. My God, what was he thinking?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, that was the Alfredo Simon. They were doing anything they could to stay. It really is. I mean, when people are saying the window is closed, I think the Tigers were kind of stuck with the window half open, where they had these superstars who could still play, but not the stars and scrubs model, where they don't have enough supporting talent, but just enough stars to keep going for it. It's sort of what you see with the Angels every year, where they're like, God, we really need to rebuild, but boy, we have Mike Trout. We should probably go for it.
Right. And, even Texas feels that way. Like they built a really good bullpen last year and kind of contended to me out of nowhere. But, I look at that team and, there's a lot of dead money on the books there. Adrian Beltre is still, their best position player, probably. Maybe you could look at Mazzara or, there's a few other candidates, but they traded for Jonathan Lucroy, and he's faded right out as soon as he pretty much got there. That kind of thing keeps happening to a team that spends a lot of money sometimes, and that's the thing. Like the Tigers can't get out. You can't get out of this. There's no way. Like how do you tank next year and just kind of come out like, oh, we're going to be a bad team when you're still spending $170 million that's just, baked into the pie from the beginning. You're in a really, really bad spot there, where if your team is bad and you're not getting attendance, you are going to actually start to lose money. And, I've argued that, I don't really want to hear about the Ilitch's money problems.
No, I don't care.
Yeah, especially when you consider, like the MLB advanced media payments that these teams are getting now that isn't even really factored in. Teams are fine. And, I commend the Ilitches for continuing to spend, and I continue to disparage teams like the Braves for, demanding a new stadium and then spending no money and kind of backing it up with this sort of fiction of the, the total rebuild, we're doing it the right way. Call me when you win a World Series and stop jacking your fans over. But, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, you brought it up. It's kind of, I haven't looked at this, but I'm sure we could look at it. The buy your way to a title model just doesn't really work anymore. And it didn't really work even. I mean, the Yankees were kind of the team to do that in the the aughts or whatever. And what they get? They got 2 titles out of it. One. I don't remember.
Yeah. I think they got 2.
Yeah, and that's paying all that money for Sabathia and A-Rod and Teixeira and all that stuff. Yeah, you get good players, but it really does seem to be that around baseball. Their teams are paying money, but they're being a little bit more selective about it, and they're doing more, growing from within when they can. And then, you still see these big contracts, but look at how do the Cubs feel about Jason Hayward right now?
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going, because, you look at the Cubs and they don't really have that much in really good pitching prospects. And I don't want to say they lucked out, but they did kind of luck out to get Kyle Hendricks and Jake Arrieta. Nobody was clamoring for those.
Absolutely.
Guys. All these things sort of worked out for them. And now, a year later, you look at it and they've got a huge contract in right field for a player that's basically, maybe a slightly more powerful Jared Dyson, that they're paying, $20+ million a year to, and they don't have any pitching, and a couple guys haven't, really panned out quite as well as they'd hoped, So yeah, I mean, it can turn on you real quick, but they're so young, and they just won a World Series. So, when everybody figures they're going to be desperate, to do all these things, I wouldn't be desperate if I was Theo Epstein. I'd be like, hey, I just won you the first World Series in 100 years. Everybody chill. We're not going to do anything more, anything else that's stupid for the time being if we can help it. We're just going to relax and let these guys play themselves out. I'm going to try to swing some more deals at the minor league level, which is really how they built that. There's only a couple guys that they actually drafted that made it. So, yeah, there's a lot of ways to do it, but spending enormous amounts of cash on free agents is not the way to do it.
Yeah, it seems basically that's the way you go back, over the top at the end. You try to, you're close and you need that extra piece and you spend the money on it, and 5 years from now, be damned.
Yeah, you look, and actually that's the Astros right now. The Astros and maybe the Rockies, although they're maybe a year early, but yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Well, the Astros were kind of like a year early 2 years ago. It does seem teams kind of are a little bit like prospects in that way. They might show up and be really good, and then the sophomore slump, and then your third year they're juggernaut.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about with the GMs. I was thinking about Dayton Moore, who he came to Kansas City with the plan on building up the farm system, and there were all sorts of missteps along the way. I think they signed Mike Jacobs, big deal, and all these random things. But eventually, they stuck with him for, I think it was like year 8. By the time it finally panned out.
Didn't he get there right when they traded? It was right when they were trading Greinke, like the first time. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And so I think 2 years is too quick for Avila. I think you need, unless the front office is in disarray, you got to give the guy time. And it is largely the same organization, but he has, we've seen it. They've added TrackMan at all the minor league stadiums. They're beefing up the analytics department. They're trying to modernize the front office.
Yeah,
I think you have to give him a little time.
Yeah,
give him a little time for that to work out.
I think you kind of have to. Like, if I'm Chris Ilitch, like, maybe there's someone you can bring in, but you think about how chaotic that would be for this organization right now to bring in, some young, guy from, or even like McLeod from the Cubs or something like that. Like, revamp this whole organization. That's a multi-year project in and of itself before you can even kind of get all your ducks in a row, especially in an organization that's as kind of traditional and stable as the Tigers is for so long. Stable not necessarily being a good thing, but I just have a hard time seeing it that way. If I'm Chris Ilitch, I'm looking at ways I can help Al Avila to to kind of see through some of the fog in ways that his scouting acumen and knowledge of the game maybe doesn't translate to as well as some other aspects. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. But it's just hard for me to imagine that they're going to fire him this year. Even last week, I was on all these radio shows and everybody's like, when is Ausmus getting fired? And I'm kind of like trying to piece it out in my head, like maybe by the end of the Cleveland series here, or something like that. But in the back of my head, I'm thinking like, I don't know that the Tigers are that team to make these moves just to sort of look like they're making moves. And that's not usually smart policy. And I don't know if Brad Ausmus is going away, unless the team just melts down, and is overcome by all this strife in the clubhouse or something. I kind of feel like they're going to end up just letting him play out the year and then reevaluate it then.
Yeah, I mean, I could say I was just thinking that, like, so we both seem to agree that Avila needs more time, and that brings us to Ausmus, where, fans love to hate the manager, and he doesn't have a contract beyond this year, so there's a little bit of a lame duck thing going on there. I think if they re-signed him right now, there would be kind of an uproar.
Oh, that'd be awesome, though. It would make me laugh so hard.
but yeah, it just is.
I'm sorry. I'm just thinking about. Yeah. All right, go ahead. I'm just thinking about that. That'd be amazing.
Well, I think you end up with both. I mean, there's something to be said for maybe a new voice for a manager, but with both Avila and Ausmus, you're going to be hard pressed to find somebody who's going to come in with the same situation and work some sort of magic and make things better.
Yeah.
Unless you're bringing Dombrowski back to make some, trade magic. I don't think any young GM is going to come in and turn the team around. They're gonna have to do trades, and even if they absolutely nail a draft and get 5 consecutive All-Stars in the first 5 rounds, you're still waiting 3 or 4 years for that to happen.
Right. And then at that point, then you've got a ton of money, hopefully free, and then you've still got to be smart about who you sign in free agency to kind of take it to that level. So yeah, it's complicated, and I mean, it just keeps forcing me back, and I sometimes this feels like a conservative position to me, which I don't necessarily like, but yeah, it just keeps forcing me back into this attitude of, all right, the Tigers need to sell who they can sell for someone good at the deadline, but other than that, they shouldn't worry about it very much. They should focus on trying to, in the offseason, find a couple of guys to kind of plug holes, guys that are inexpensive, fill the corner outfield spot, try to augment center field, and maybe sign Alex Avila back as catcher, because I don't like our options there, and I'm starting to think more and more that may be as much of a problem with our pitching staff as anything. I don't want to pin that all on like James McCann or whatever, but by the same token, it just, you see like year after year, this team does not do well acquiring bullpen pieces, and guys seem to come here and do worse. And, to some degree, that's the defense maybe a little bit too, but, the defense hasn't been that bad this year, apart from Nick. So
yeah,
let's keep picking on Nick. But, I mean, they haven't really done that bad defensively. And, it's just, it's hard to see why this isn't working out to any like reasonable degree. I don't know. You've just seen a lot of people just come here and fall on their face. And we never seem to pick up a guy like Neftali Feliz and turn him into a reasonable facsimile of himself for just a year or something. We just never seem to do that.
Yeah, they haven't. I can't think of the last time they hit on a reliever who suddenly was like, oh wow, he's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, and Alex Wilson pitched a little bit for the Red Sox before he pitched for the Tigers, but I believe. But it's not like he's a stud or anything like that. He's just a solid middle reliever.
We could use 3 of him. We'd probably be in a lot better shape, but that says something. Yeah, it really does.
Well, that's a good point. And if you're gonna fault Osmus for anything, you could probably fault him for not making McCann a better defensive, receiver, pitch caller.
Yeah. And he really did look better to me last year, actually, and he seems to have regressed again to me this year. And I don't know if he just spent the whole offseason learning to hit taters more and whatever. That was his whole focus. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's catcher is such a hard position, man. I always, in my head sometimes I'm like, they should just have designated hitters for catchers. Just let those guys play defense, because you got so much responsibility, and then you still have to go and hit. Some guys can do it, a lot of guys can't. But yeah, it's you see every single start with Verlander and McCann, there's at least 1 or 2 points in the game where they're clearly not on the same page, and it's like you've caught Verlander like 50 times now.
Yeah, and you can just see the volcano, building inside Verlander in those moments for sure. Like, this kid just does not get what I want. He does not seem to be reading hitters the way I do, and yeah,
and that's a tough thing for fans to see. I think for a lot of fans, they don't see that, but we've got that X-ray vision. So. Yeah,
sure. And even I don't know that I see it, perfectly. It's hard to make, like, that's the problem. It's hard to make a metric type case, about that. Like, people are still overestimating, pitch framing to me at this point. Like, it was underestimated, and now it's to the point where, if you're a bad pitch framer, like, you just suck back there. And I look at like, I just see too many smart, knowledgeable people telling me that, Sal Perez is a good catcher. Like, to just argue with that based on, his pitch framing isn't very good. Like, I can't make that argument myself.
Yeah, I mean, when, these worst pitch framers are costing their team 25 runs. Like, well, that seems a bit much.
It
but
does.
Who knows?
Yeah, maybe
they are catching a lot of innings. So.
Yeah, but maybe maybe that's it. You spread those 25 runs over 120 games that they caught, and I don't know how big the impact is there. Can you balance that against his blocking and throwing abilities? There's just there's no way to do that.
Yeah. But well, speaking of catchers, we talked about the Cubs a little bit. There was a fun little incident, fun for us, anybody who's not a Cubs fan. See, what they gave up 7 stolen bases to the Nats, who I just saw it come across that Trey Turner broke his wrist.
Oh, really?
He's out indefinitely. So he had 4 steals in that game. One of the bright young stars in the game. What if the Nats could use a shortstop?
Oh, maybe they went against code right there.
Yeah.
They broke too many. They stole too many bases.
Yeah, the gods got them. But yeah, so they stole 7 bases against Miguel Montero, and then Montero afterward came out and said, "This sucks because it's on me, but the pitchers aren't getting me the ball."
Yeah. Jake Arrieta is too slow to the plate. It's his fault.
Yeah, and it was like, it's partially true, mostly true, I think, but it's not like Montero is not known for his arm either.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of funny.
Or his tact.
Yeah. No, well, yeah, telling the truth will get you cut.
Yep.
And he sure as hell he got cut. I think he had 2 years and $14 million left on his deal, and they just cut him.
Yep, that sounds right. Like, wow, we won't have disharmony in this clubhouse, sir. We're gonna wear pajamas and have a good old time.
Yeah, it is kind of weird, that Joe Madden, everybody's favorite manager, something's not right with the Cubs this year. But I don't know. Like I said, it's one of those things where everybody wanted, like the Cubs, and then they win, and now we can hate them. So.
Yeah, I'm right there. I didn't want him to win in the first place. I was actually rooting for the Indians, which is disturbing to me, but I just kind of wanted Rajai to win. I wanted Rajai to get a World Series.
Boy, and that home run will probably be forgotten outside of Cleveland.
Yeah,
one of the greatest World Series home runs of all time. And
it's going to break my heart that wasn't a dagger that will live in infamy forever in Chicago. I remember that one almost as well as I remember Maglio's in 06.
God, yeah.
I went nuts when he hit that home run. I'm not a fan of all this, so obviously I was extra thrilled.
Yeah, no. There are some guys that's okay to root against. Generally guys who, we talked about K-Rod, we talked about Aroldis Chapman, but yeah. So I don't know. Is there any more, league-wide stuff going on that you wanted to touch on?
Oh, let's see. Yeah, I mean, that was really the fun part, Apart from that, Aaron Judge and Cody Bellinger just continue to hit like somehow they've, tapped into the matrix out there. Yeah. And, something else. This isn't MLB related, but Emily Walden, our buddy at 2080 Baseball, just retweeted something tweeted it originally that Anthony Gose has just put together another perfect inning with 3 strikeouts, no hits, no runs, no walks. Wow. So look out.
Yeah. Well, I think his last 3 or 4 outings, he's.
Yep, she says 4th consecutive perfect outing in a row. That whole thing is just fun. That whole thing just interests me.
Yeah, it's super fun. It's anytime you can get a guy switching positions in the middle of his career. It's fun to just watch. It's obviously it's gonna be tough.
Yeah,
and there are gonna be a lot of bumps along the way, but you never know. like Kenley Jansen was a catcher. They're like, hey, let's just put you on the mound. Oh, you've got a magic pitch that no one can hit. Fantastic.
Yep. Oh, look, your cutter is Mariano Rivera quality, but a little harder than normal. Yeah.
Yeah. So you never know. Every now and then there's something like that. So it's fun. You got a lefty who's throwing in the upper 90s, apparently touching 100. So yeah, if nothing else, that's a cool, fun story.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to touch on the minors a little bit more if you want.
Yeah, let's do that.
There's nothing else going on in the one other thing I just saw another thing that came across. They said Carlos Correa hit 2 home runs today, giving him 16 on the year. He's the first shortstop in Major League history to hit 15 plus home runs in his first 3 seasons. Which
wow,
I couldn't believe that because I was like, well, what about like Nomar?
Yeah,
but and I would assume that Corey Seager will also do that.
Yeah,
but although I don't know if they count. So yeah, Nomar only hit 4 home runs in his first season. I guess that's how they're counting it. That he played 24 games in 1996. Not so that's not his rookie year. But all right, whatever.
Never trust statisticians, people.
No.
Everybody out there, take a lesson from that.
Lies, damn lies, and stats.
So, yeah.
So, yeah, we can talk. All 8 Tigers affiliates are now playing. The Gulf Coast League started this week, so we got a glimpse at some of the younger Tigers prospects. Since they closed down the VZL, the Venezuelan or VSL Summer League, the one of the Gulf Coast League teams is just filled with like these 17 and 18-year-old Latin kids who who are just. I mean, it's still rookie ball, but boy, are they overwhelmed. I think they scored like 2 runs in every game so far this year. It's just it's a tough environment.
It's just, something well, maybe I'll mention this when we get to Bo Burrows, but I think people do forget, like what their own college years were like, and that these guys are in that same situation, but under like ludicrous amounts of pressure to like save their families in a lot of cases.
And they can't speak the language in most cases. And
Yeah.
So they're playing in Florida at noon every day.
Yeah.
So that's fun.
Yeah, it's only 95 there. Hey, they're used to it, right? Come on.
Yeah, but so it's I don't know. For me, this is more fun though, just to see what these youngest guys are doing, because you start at the top. There's just not a whole lot to be excited about in Toledo. They did they did win tonight, or they're winning. Yeah, they won 12-5 tonight.
Oh, right on.
But that's despite Buck Farmer going only 3 2/3 and giving up 5 runs.
Oh, that's
but
rough.
They had but there's just Adducey is back down there, so that might be something. They have him playing center field, so.
Oh, interesting. And Hicks is back down there, yeah. So they got
Hicks
now.
Hicks has been a good soldier, but it's Brian Holiday, Jason Cruzan, all these guys who are just the boulevard of broken dreams down there.
Yeah, maybe that's a topic we should hit on at some point, is Hicks versus McCann. It's becoming a popular topic.
Yeah, boy, we could touch on it a little bit right now. I mean, Hicks's lack of walks bothers me a little bit.
Yeah,
but it's not like McCann is known for walking. I mean, it's up a little bit more this year.
Yeah, he's actually above the league average this year, but yeah.
Yeah, Hicks certainly seems to have a better swing to me.
Yeah, it's like he can cover more of the plate and hit right-handers. So
yeah, not quite so rotational. I mean, that's the thing. McCann is pretty good against lefties. There's still that. But yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thing to look at going forward. But again, there's just not. I mean, Joe Jimenez is back down in Toledo too, so we'll probably see him before too long.
Yeah,
but it's not fun to talk about Toledo. But
no, not really. And they brought Rondon up. Here's my Toledo question though: is do you think Kristen Stewart or Mike Gerber will both be there, or one of them be there after the trade deadline, once they kind of sort things out and decide like, okay, all these like 28-year-old guys who never made it can go away now, and we're going to try to develop somebody here?
Yeah, well, the one issue there is there aren't really other outfielders to push them up.
Yeah.
They just moved a bunch of guys up from West Michigan to Lakeland, and the guys in Lakeland just kind of evaporated.
Yeah.
Ben Verlander no longer with us.
Yeah.
But I do think, I mean, teams can figure out ways to make that. They'll just send Cruzan back down or something like that. And I do think it may not be immediately after because I think it's July 1st is usually the deadline for when these guys, they can, if they're not up in the majors or whatever, they can leave.
Oh, they can all opt out then? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that we may see that soon, but it wouldn't shock me if it's more like Stewart and or Gerber get up there around August 1st.
Yeah.
Just to get a little bit of taste of AAA, to see some of those funky breaking balls and
Yeah, some of these guys who are rehabbing from major league injuries and
Yeah, so I think it would benefit maybe a little bit for them to get a taste of it, because to a certain extent, AAA isn't always necessary for pitchers. I don't feel like.
Yeah.
If you're pitching really well in AA, there's a good chance you can come up and contribute in the majors. I mean, that's Fulmer. And what did he do in AAA? Like 4 starts last year?
Yeah, he was barely there. Yeah.
He was mostly just to, bide his time. But for hitters, I do think hitters can learn a lot, or in AAA, just because of the amount of like junk ball and wily veterans they'll see. Guys who just know how to pitch, and they'll pitch backwards to them and all that stuff. So I do think it will help them, and then we'll see them probably a ton in spring training next year, I think. And they'll have a chance to break with the big league club, theoretically.
Yeah, which I hope they don't really do, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Gerber's been kind of interesting this year. Like, I've always been a little skeptical. Well, I mean, everybody's a little skeptical of Gerber, but he's kind of hung in there better than I thought he would the whole way. And just based on the fact that he seems sort of Matuk, like he plays the game the right way. He doesn't make a lot of dumb mistakes. He's sort of like thinks his way through the game pretty well and kind of seems to maximize what he's got, physically. Yeah, I don't know. He's kind of interesting to think about. Stewart's a little bit more like, I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen when you start seeing major league breaking balls, but yeah.
Yeah, I think
I'm curious.
I think I agree with you there. Which I think Stewart's going to need a little bit more time because I think the ceiling is higher.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, as I said, all-around player, but if he maximizes his hitting and power, then he's a better player than Gerber, who is probably, when we compare to Matuk's a good example. He's I compared him to Andy Dirks before.
Yeah.
Sort of, even Tyler Collins to an extent. It's sort of, 45s to 50s across the board on the scouting card.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, Mark Anderson from Ticetown said he sat on an Erie series last week or 2 weeks ago, and he was pleasantly surprised with how Gerber looked in center field. I don't know if that means that he thinks he can play in the majors, but he wasn't out of place there. He could handle it. So.
Yeah, I've also heard, Emily Walden was telling me, that he really, has kind of impressed the Tigers just with his build this year. That he really did kind of put on some good lean muscle in his upper half and seems to be driving the ball a little more authoritatively. So yeah, there might be a little something with the Gerbs still.
Yeah, and interesting. He and Ben Verlander were really good friends, and so he's also friends with Justin Verlander, and then his brother. Mike Gerber's brother, David, who I had going to the Tigers in my mock draft, but I think the Blue Jays beat him to it. And so Ben Verlander was super happy for him and tweeting it out. So there's, he's got some friends in the Tigers. If Verlander sticks around, he might be an advocate for him. Not that necessarily means much, but who knows?
Yep. Well, that's how John Hicks got this job, obviously.
That's right. Goochland. Goochland too.
Yeah, the Goochland pipeline.
There used to be a rap group called the Gucci Crew.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Gucci Crew, too. It was a long time ago in the 90s out of Miami, or late 80s. But anyway, yeah, so Erie, other than those two guys, it is kind of an interesting team. That we've talked about Tyler Alexander a lot in this. He's not having a great year, but he's still on the prospect radar. But Bo Burrows, who pitched today and got lit up a little bit in the first inning, and you had some good comments about that I didn't see until after I made roughly the same comments like an hour later. That this is great for him to come up and struggle a little bit, get hit hard, walk guys. This is what you need from a pitcher. This is what he has to do to develop. He has to learn what he has to get better at. He's not going to learn by posting a .9 ERA down in Lakeland.
Yeah, mostly with throwing 90% fastballs by people. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we know. I mean, we've seen that with Joe Jimenez. He was untouchable throughout the minors, and guys in the majors will hit 110 mile an hour fastball if they know it's coming. Yeah,
no problem at all. And yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like, if you could talk a little bit about just sort of the process of when a guy gets to Double-A. I mean, I saw Lynn Henning, I think, say this. That they're telling him throw your slider all the time, and the slider's not a developed pitch yet with any consistency. It's just flashing plus here and there. So, yeah, I mean, you kind of, you're just working on things there, and people look at their numbers, and I'm just like, my God, don't, the numbers don't mean anything until he's been there like a year.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. You will see hitters in low A and high A swing at a breaking ball that never had a chance to be a strike, like 90% of the time. Like, you could throw your slider off the plate and finish it off the plate, and they're just going to swing at it.
Yeah.
But once you get to Double-A, that doesn't really happen much anymore. These guys are in Double-A for a reason, for the most part. They've shown the ability to lay off pitches like that, and so you have to learn how to spot your breaking balls, and you have to learn how to pitch a little bit. You have to start them off with that curveball away, and then work them, finish them with a changeup or something like that. So.
Yeah. And if you want to go away, you might need to bust them in on the hands first with a fastball and then go away. You can't just go away. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to work all four sides of the plate.
Set things up a little bit, yeah.
And this is, it's just a part of the national or natural progression. These are guys. Bo Burrows was a first-round pick because he's got immense natural talent. He throws the ball really hard. He's got a feel for spinning the breaking ball, and these guys have enough talent to sort of get by on that talent alone for a while. But yeah, it's a game, and there's a lot of strategy. And so once you reach a certain level, you really have to learn the game. And some guys have that at a younger age than others. Like there's a pitcher for the Braves, Mike Soroka, who's actually a Canadian, and his stuff, he's got good stuff, but it's not like off the chart stuff. But he was sent straight to Double A this year out of A ball as a, I think 19 or 20-year-old, and he's pitching really well because he's got that feel for pitching that some guys have. Other guys have to develop it. It's
and sometimes guys who turn out best are the guys who have that raw stuff, that raw electric fastball, and they just haven't needed to learn that yet. And that's the thing. Sometimes Tyler Alexander is a good case. Like he comes through college and it hasn't worked out so well, but he's a guy who you can see coming right out and doing okay because he can already set hitters up. He can already use both sides of the plate, use his pitches to change their eye level, all those sorts of things that a guy like Beau Burrows just hasn't needed to do at all. And I mean and just to kind of go back to just the basics again. There's 3 levels of A ball depending on how you want to look at it. There's thousands of players in A ball almost, and then you all narrow it down to these 30 Double A teams, and that's the cream of the crop, and that's where you don't have all these guys who can't hit anything but a straight fastball, are all weeded out now. They're not there for you to exploit when there's a guy on base. And here you are. You're actually starting to face the cream of the crop. Yeah.
No, that was a great point you bring up with Tyler Alexander, because and Roger and I have touched on this a couple times, that there's a long history of college pitchers who come in particularly lefties for whatever reason. They come and dominate in low A ball and even high A because they know how to pitch. They know how to throw a changeup 3 inches off the plate. That'll get these young players to swing every time. They know how to throw 3 straight curveballs and have the hitters swing themselves into the ground. But it is often the guys, like you said, the guys with the raw ability who need to learn how to pitch that end up exceeding and succeeding. I guess the one guy comes to mind is like Noah Syndergaard, who had just he didn't have the stuff he has now.
Yeah,
but it was nasty stuff, and he eventually had to learn. He just had to learn how to pitch. And then, before he got injured this year, he was like, 50 strikeouts and 2 walks and throwing 100-mile-an-hour fastballs in every pitch. And that's sort of what you kind of cross your fingers and hope that Matt Manning turns into something like that.
Yeah.
And we've seen some pretty good signs from him so far.
Yep.
But that the stuff at least is there, and now you gotta harness that and teach him how to pitch. But along the lines of like Tyler Alexander, there are a couple lefties down in Lakeland who just have had monster games recently.
So Matt Hall.
Yeah, so Matt Hall is definitely, and he's another classic guy. He demolished hitters in the Midwest League, low A ball last year. They couldn't touch him because he was a college lefty who came out. He led college baseball in strikeouts his senior, I think he may have been junior or senior, because he's got a really nice curveball. I don't think he touches even 90 miles an hour with his fastball, but these low A hitters can't touch him. And he struggled a little bit in high A last year, but just the other day he took a perfect game into, I think it was the 8th inning.
Yeah.
Two outs in the 8th inning. So yeah, and 10 or 11 strikeouts. It's
so those guys just haven't seen a breaking ball that good, maybe ever.
Yeah, certainly not a guy who could locate it, locate it every time. And that's, but Matt Hall is kind of, he's not much of a prospect in reality.
He's a reliever, yeah.
Yeah, and his only path to the majors is probably as a loogie, a lefty specialist, because of that curveball. And if he can spot his fastball and throw that curveball, he's got a chance. But beyond that, not so much. So that's I think a good example of the caution you have to take with these numbers. And another guy who is similar is Austin Sodders, who was just promoted from West Michigan. I think he's a 7th rounder last year out of one of those Cal State schools. Another lefty. He throws a bit harder than Hall, and I'm pretty sure his best secondary pitch is a changeup. But it's still sort of the same thing. He's a guy. He's a lefty. He's a little bit more polished. He knows how to pitch. So in his first start in high A, he had a perfect game through, I think, 5 or 6 innings before giving up a run and then eventually losing.
Right.
But
he's there with 3 pitches and they haven't seen it. Yeah.
And then he pitched tonight, and this is his second start in high A. 7 innings, 5 hits, 1 walk, 10 strikeouts, no earned runs.
Yeah. Right.
That was before, and then Ghost followed up with a perfect inning in Jason Foley, one of the great stories.
Yeah. The Tigers scouting department, the bulked up scouting department's great find on the year.
Yeah, now he struggled in his first outing in high A. I think he gave up like 4 hits and 3 runs.
Yeah.
But worked a clean inning tonight, and I'm not really concerned about him because he's a reliever and he throws hard, and I think he'll be fine.
Yeah. And he's a bit of a long shot anyway. You hope you have, 10, 15 guys who can throw 99, 100, and one of them learns to command it, and bam, you got a reliever. Maybe two who learn to command it.
Well, that's that. The funny thing is, we're at Tigetown. We're doing our midseason top 50 right now.
Oh yeah.
We're having the discussions about it, and we've sort of settled in on it. And I don't think this is like too hard to figure out. There are about 5. There are 5 sort of good Tigers prospects. I would say guys who have a chance to be, average to above average major leaguers.
Yeah.
And then after that, there's another 5 or 6 guys who could contribute. And then there are literally like a dozen hard throwing relievers they have. I'm not even joking. It's like Harrison Moreno, Jairo Labor, Adam Ravenel, Eduardo Jimenez, Jason Foley, Spencer Turnbull is going to be a reliever at some point.
Yeah.
Sandy Baez is probably a reliever. Gregory Soto is probably a reliever. Like they just have a boatload of these guys, and you hope that 2 or 3 of them work out.
Castro and Brian Garcia.
Brian Garcia. I forgot about him. Yeah, and Ecker.
Yeah. We traded Drew Smith away already.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's people like to joke about the Tigers drafting relievers and developing relievers, but they do it a lot.
They do. It doesn't work out hardly ever.
No, but I mean, I guess you got to like your odds of getting at least one decent arm if you've got literally a dozen of them. But so
I don't know. I just wonder, maybe you should just take a whole bunch of starters who have a breaking ball already, and then just send them to drive line baseball and make them throw weighted balls until they either throw 98 or their arm falls off.
Yeah, well, that's sort of what you hope with Baez and Soto. These guys who, Baez was working as a reliever a little bit in spring training and really impressing people. He's a starter this year and has really turned it on as of late. But this is a guy, his fastball can get up in the high 90s.
Yeah.
And the secondary stuff is still in question, but he threw some, it was pretty nice, split changes in spring training.
The conversation we had last week about, when do you convert guys, from starters to relievers, and why in God's name can't the Tigers put their own bullpen together to any reasonable degree?
Yeah. But it's also for me, it's a sign, because just about every system has these guys in high numbers. Remember just like the Angels when the Tigers were playing them, they brought up I forgot the kid's name, but he was up there throwing 100 in relief, and it's just like, oh, all right, like everybody else. But that shows you the system. It's better. You've got 4 or 5 really interesting starting pitching options now.
Mm-hmm.
And out of those, you hope maybe 2 work out if you're going to be honest. And then the position player ranks are kind of thin still.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it'll be interesting to see. This kind of comes back to just writing about the sport. Prospect lists don't really matter, but seeing the next list come out and seeing how many of the Tigers kind of big 4 starting pitchers are in the top 100 or close to it, because that for whatever reason it changes people's perception of what the farm system looks like, and it could change a lot. It could change a lot based on whether Kyle Funkhauser is ranked 120th or 98th.
Mm-hmm.
So. Yeah, we'll see how these guys do. We should talk about Alex Faedo, though, who was just stupid good at the College World Series. Just a dominant pair of outings. Just looked like a man out there, yelling into the opposing team's dugout and just looking angry. I was like, oh, who is this guy? People are gonna love this kid.
Yeah, no, that's a nice pick for them. I think some people discuss this. If they hold the draft a couple of weeks later, does Fido make it to 18th? It's possible. I mean, you don't. One of the worst things scouts can do is sort of scout the stats.
Right.
But
or the recency bias. Yeah, that too. Sure.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, this is the biggest stage this kid's going to be on until if and when he pitches in playoffs as a pro.
Yeah.
And maybe even bigger for him. At such a young age, in the biggest games of his life, he stepped up like crazy and just dominated. And those are those things you like to see from there were back when people were trying to figure out what to do with, like, Mark Appel ended up going first overall.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, AJ Puck. There were these guys who, they had the stuff, it seemed like, to be the 1-1 overall, but there was just something about their attitude. Like it's kind of touchy-feely to talk about it, but it just didn't seem like they had the killer instinct, the mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And Puck has been doing fine this year, but Appel has fallen apart as a prospect. Like, he may end up as a Luke Hochevar reliever, in the majors one day, but his career as a starter has not gone well. And there are these things that beyond the stuff that you have to look into, and Fado definitely seems to have that. And then also, as a bonus, has good stuff.
Yep. That, he's got a lot of movement on that two-seamer, and that's a nasty slider. He's going to need a little more, but not a whole lot. So
he can cut the fastball. He has the two-seamer. I think his mechanics are a little bit funky, but I look at that and say, he throws strikes. Maybe the command needs a little polishing.
Sure.
But I also see his body type. He's like super high-waisted.
Yeah.
And I feel like you get him in a pro strength and conditioning program, you iron the mechanics out a little bit, and he gets a little bit farther away from his double knee surgery. Right. And I really feel like he's a guy who could be sitting like 93 to 96 and touching 97, 98 as a pro. Now, you never know, when guys start throwing every 5 days, maybe they back up a little bit.
Sure.
But just based on that body, he's 6'5", like 220, 230. It just seems like he really could take a step forward.
Yeah, and he doesn't look, particularly chiseled right now. You kind of see that sort of hunched position as he goes into his load with his shoulders, and there's a little bit of flying open there that's going to happen. But right now he makes it work for himself, and it actually seems to add to the tailing action on his fastball. It just kind of comes wheeling out of there. And he just seems like a guy that if you could build him, a little more from the ground up and get a little bit more of a powerful drive to the plate, that it's going to kind of negate that a little bit to me. And it seems like there should be some projection for velocity there too. But and just the anger. I love the anger. He just looks like an angry young man when he's on the mound. He wants to destroy you. I felt a little bit of Verlander type presence out there.
Yeah, I mean that's what you want. You want pitchers who are either dicks or just like completely emotionless, like Michael Fulmer. Yeah, Fulmer is like this pitching zombie that all he wants to do is throw baseballs and eat your brains.
Yep, and then go home and read his Bible with his wife and like do a little plumbing and just watch some TV, and then come back out tomorrow and just destroy you again with a cold heart. Yeah,
and Verlander, guys like Verlander and like I don't know, like a Garrett Cole or something, they just want to humiliate you. Yeah. And that's what I want. That's what I want for my pitchers. So I'm fine with it.
It's a weird thing. I mean, it is hilarious when you get into scouting. And I didn't read or talk to any scouts when I was young or anything like that. But you see now the way they look at kids. They look at kids' girlfriends. Like, why doesn't this guy have a hotter girlfriend?
The lack of confidence.
Yeah, exactly. It's hilarious.
Yeah. So and then I think we just to finish up with the Tigers minor league stuff. We touched on Lakeland a little bit. They had they brought up a bunch of guys from West Michigan, Jake Robson. We touched on Sodders and Foley. They also brought up Blaze Salter, who's another kind of good example of not scouting the stat line. Yeah. Because he was hitting his cover off the ball. I think he led all of baseball in doubles and was leading the Midwest League in RBIs. And he's hitting well when he's in Lakeland too, but they're, it's a first right-handed hitting, right-throwing first base DH. who's probably once he gets to higher levels going to struggle quite a bit. When I saw him, it wasn't really bat speed; it was some more strength.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And but those are good guys to have in the minors. I just don't want people to think like they're some hidden scouting gem.
Right. What about Gabriel Quintana?
Quintana is another. So he was actually.
Can he roll? That's what I need to ask right there.
What's that?
Can he roll? Is the key phrase?
Can he roll on Shabbos?
Yeah, exactly.
No, he's another guy he's got some hitting ability, a little bit of hitting ability. Definitely has plus raw power. Can got a good arm. Can play third base at a passable level, but he doesn't. It's a ton of swing and miss and not much patience. So he's another sort of org guy who could one day maybe weasel his way into the majors, a la Jeffrey Marte.
Yeah.
But I think he's even a step above a guy like Salter, who what was the guy? I'm trying to remember. Is it Brad Eldred? Brad Eldred?
Oh yeah.
That they came up for like a week.
Kind of a career minor leaguer, and
hit a homer in his first at bat with the Tigers or something like that, and then didn't do it again. Didn't do anything again.
And might be out of baseball. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's like Salter's best possible outcome. It's a guy like that. It's just a tough profile, and you got to hit the living hell out of the ball, and you've got to show other skills. And then speaking of sort of first base types, the Reynaldo Rivera, if we're going to talk about a little bit about the draft, he's gotten off to a really nice start in Connecticut.
Yep, you like seeing those walks.
Just
a lot of walks.
Yeah, absolutely, and he hit his first home run last night. I think he put up like 5 RBIs. He seems, I think her name is Elizabeth Marie. She's a big Connecticut Tigers fan, and I follow her on Twitter, and she'll post videos. She had a video of him hitting a 2-run double. Yeah, and the ball just, you can see it jumps off his bat. He's a big, huge, strong guy. And like you said, you'd like, walk. If you're going to be a big guy with power and have a huge strike zone, taking walks is nice. Now, obviously, this is short season A ball.
Yeah.
We don't want to read too much into the stats, but as I always say, good stats better than bad stats. So
it's
nice to see him off. He's hitting 300 about right now. I mean, what it was 6 games into the season, but
just people that's a guy, that's a guy to keep an eye on if you're looking for anything. But just take it easy. Take it easy, people.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point too. Yeah, let's not go crazy. He's got 8 walks in his first handful of games, and he's got a home run, some doubles. It was his 2nd round pick, so he's a prospect. But
and I was actually talking to Mark Anderson on Twitter a little bit, and he was gracious enough to tell me a little bit about Hector Martinez, who's a guy I've just kind of been aware of just because he looks like a middle infielder who might be able to hit for power at some point. He kind of got back to me that he looked like second base was not going to be a problem for him, but just that it was always going to come back to contact and the ability to drive the ball when he got to see better pitching. But he's very young. That's a guy that the Tigers spent $300,000, which is about the max that they ever spend on any international free agents. And that's kind of the kind of pathway that Eugenio Suarez and Hernan Perez and some of those guys that everybody laments now a bit ridiculously. But that's the path that those guys kind of followed. So I have been kind of trying to look at some guys like that. Julio Martinez is another one. There are more Martinez. There is another Skywalker. We have plenty more.
Yeah, Julio is actually JD's first name too, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, Hector Martinez is a guy who has just hit everywhere he's been, at least for average. So he's always shown the ability to put the bat on the ball, and yeah, there's enough there to play second base, I think. And he even had a little bit of speed, as I recall, but I haven't looked at his numbers. Probably not enough, not going to be a big base stealing threat when he climbs the ladder. But he is a guy to remember. A guy who can, anytime you have somebody who can hit,
right?
It's nice to keep, because that is the fundamental aspect of the game.
And play infield. If you could do those two things,
absolutely. Yeah, he's not. He's an aggressive guy, so it's not going to be, one of those. It's. I used to always get upset about Dixon Machado because he'd be hitting like 220 with just as many walks or more walks than strikeouts.
Yeah.
And it was like just get this guy stronger. He can hit. He can play defense. He's got a little bit of speed. Get him stronger, and it finally happened. But
it looks like it's looked like it's happened. He's been impressive lately, a little bit. Yeah.
But Hector Martinez, a name to know, at least to follow there in Connecticut. They did, and then one of the other, Gio Arriera.
Oh yeah.
Had their fourth round pick this year had just about the worst possible pro debut you can have. I think he gave up 5 hits to the first 5 batters he faced. There may have been a walk or 2 in there, and departed the game without recording out and gave up 5 or 6 runs.
Yeah.
But again, you never know. Kyle Funkhauser had a bad outing in his second start this year, and it's been just fine.
Yeah, he was 23. A lot of these guys, like, I think I don't know if I said this to somebody on Twitter, but I mean, if you drop, Bo Burrows has been in Erie for like 2 weeks. If you dropped him in the middle of downtown Erie, I'm not sure he could find his room yet. Try to imagine for a second what you were like when you were 20. And what it's like to like have new teammates, new coaches, new city, like all that kind of stuff. Just those basic things take some time to get used to and get comfortable in your surroundings. So let's not start jumping the gun and expecting that the Tigers rebuild is going to take a year, because it is not.
Yeah, and no, and you bring up Bo Burrows, and that's, I guess, the last thing I want to talk about is the futures game.
Oh yeah.
Which for my money. So first of all, anybody who listens to this podcast knows that I'm like just kind of a prospect hound. If there are,
if you're not into prospects, you should not be here listening to this podcast. You've gone horribly right.
I mean, it doesn't really even matter the sport. Like, I'm in I follow high school or like college football recruiting, and like I don't watch NASCAR, but if you tell me there's like a really great young racer, I'll be like, oh, that's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
So for my money, the futures game is the best feature of any all-star game in any sport. The NBA has something similar with the rookies and sophomores game, but it's just an exhibition because they're not playing defense. In baseball, you kind of have to. Like, you never see guys, maybe in the Major League All-Star game when they don't particularly care that much. But these are all kids who are hungry on a big stage or in front of hundreds and hundreds of scouts. They're out there showing out. Yeah. It's the future of baseball, and we've seen, was it 5-6 years ago that Nick Castellanos won the MVP? These are, even, was it 2005? I think Verlander and Zumaya were in the futures game at Comerica. So for me, it's really fun. Nobody has to convince me to watch this thing, but
there's a couple of guys I've been interested in for a while too, like Yadier Alvarez in particular. But yeah, go for it.
No, I mean, there are reasons for everybody to watch it. I think number one, 2 Tigers prospects are in it, and we've talked about them both, Bo Burrows and Jairo Labor, both on Erie right now. Both started the season in Lakeland, and both have made their way up to Erie. And for most of us, it'll be the first time seeing Bo Burrows pitch.
Yeah.
I tried to watch him pitch, but I was never able to get him down in West Michigan. And Labor actually pitched in the futures game 2 years ago, when he was still part of the Blue Jays.
Oh yeah, as a starter, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's my other reason to watch this is there's a good chance if the Tigers do sell that another player in this game will be on the Tigers at some point later this season.
Yeah.
Because these aren't all top 100 prospects, but these are all guys, because they have to fill it out by position and figure out somebody from each team, each organization. Mm-hmm. But so there's, he
sometimes
watched the game.
It's kind of a reward for a guy who's, had a nice season, even if he isn't, one of their top 2 or 3 prospects. And
yeah, and I think, I think they had Davidas Neverauskas in there last year or the year before, and it was like, all right, well, he's not really a prospect, but he's an okay prospect. But so yeah, they announced the rosters today, and I'm super pumped because I'm a prospect guy. I sent you over just now, Brandon. I sent on Twitter the links to the rosters. I don't know if you want to take a look at them if you care. If there's anybody who jumps out at you.
Oh, there's a whole bunch. I've actually, as you've been talking, I've actually been looking and seeing, like, I don't want to steal your thunder, but like Vlad Guerrero Jr. is there. I mean, you're going to see Yoan Moncada, who's, the key guy in the Chris Sale trade. I'm real excited to see him, although he may, torture us for years with the White Sox. Eloy Jimenez, who's another guy, that a lot of people think that the Cubs might have to deal to get like a top tier starter. Victor Robles for the Nationals.
Yeah, there's just names up and down. These anybody who follows prospects, these are really interesting names. But like you mentioned, yeah, I think the biggest name will probably be Moncada. He's one of the top 2 or 3 prospects in baseball. I do wonder if the Cubs or the White Sox are eventually going to move him to center field.
Oh yeah.
But, just it's not that he has like brutal reports on defense. It's probably his weakest link right now.
But he does have the speed to kind of cover it out there.
No, he's got plenty of speed. He's got plenty of arm. It's just, the actions and getting used to it. And I think if, they move him to center field and just go ahead and say like, hey, just go catch the ball.
Yeah.
I think that may work out better for him. But,
kind of free him up rather than like, covering second base. And yeah.
Yeah, but if you can get a middle infielder with this sort of skill level, then that's good. The only other concern with him is the strikeouts, but he's young. Yeah. Hasn't had a whole lot of time above it, so that's a name people should know. But yeah, the one guy I tweeted this out. I mean, God, there's Soroka, who I mentioned, still in the 19. Cal Quantrill was a interesting name. A guy who kind of didn't pitch at all his junior year of college, basically because he had a deal worked out already.
Yeah, I just was like taking care of himself.
Yeah, because he had already blown out his elbow.
Yeah. Alex Verdugo. A lot of these guys are people that you'll see in trade discussion or trade rumor posts, for people out there who read that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Verdugo's a guy who a lot of people, the Tigers need a center fielder. Dodgers might need a Verlander.
Yeah. They're not going to trade him for JD Martinez, so probably don't ask. But yeah.
Francisco Mejia, who's a catcher for the Indians, who's a really interesting prospect. He had like a 50-game hitting streak last year. Still growing into his power. He's got like an 80 arm. That should be interesting. But the one, and you mentioned Victor Robles, who could be a huge star, a center fielder for the Nats. Rafael Devers for the Red Sox, supposedly the one Red Sox prospect that Dombrowski didn't want to trade.
Yeah.
And they traded Moncada and Kopech and everybody, but they didn't want to. Maybe he's just got a thing for third baseman.
He's got bad flashbacks to Nick.
Yeah, one of my favorite guys is Ronald Acuna, possibly Acuna, I don't know.
Yeah.
Who, and part of this is maybe because I grabbed him into my fantasy league at the beginning of the year. But he's a 19-year-old kid who he was in low A a little bit last year, and I think he broke his hand. So to get more at bats, the Braves sent him off to Australia to play in the ABL, along with guys like Zach Shepard from the Tigers.
Yeah,
we didn't touch on that a couple of the downsides of the minor league. Stephen Moya and Zach Shepard were both sent down, so that's never a good sign. Dropped a level, but anyway, Acuna came in and so he dominated in Australia, and they sent him to high A this year after what was it? Yeah, 73 games. No, just 40 games in low A ball last year as an 18-year-old, where he hit 311. So high A this year in 28 games, he hit 287 with 3 homers and 14 steals. They bumped him up to double A as a 19-year-old. He doesn't turn 20 until December. And so now on the season now, he's hitting 304 with 8 homers, 30 steals, and he plays center field.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's a guy. He sounds like the sort of guy who's a legit sort of 5-tool talent who will probably slow down after 2 or 3 years and move more to a corner and hit for more power. But I'm excited.
Yeah, for sure. Is he the Braves' top prospect at the moment, or close?
Coming into the year, he wasn't. I would be shocked if he isn't now. I mean, they still have a ton of really interesting arms. We talked about Soroka. There's Colby Allard. They just signed. Who did they get in the draft this year? They got the kid from Vanderbilt, right?
Yeah.
Kyle Wright.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
But yeah, to me, if you got a 19-year-old hitting 300, he's striking out a little bit more than you'd like, and walking not quite as much. But still, this is a 19-year-old at Double A who's hitting for power. and stealing bases. He's getting caught a little bit more than you'd like, but again, this is
Yep, the speed is there, the bat speed is there, and the power is there. Those are good tools.
And he's a legit center fielder right now with an arm. So it's I'd be shocked if he's not the number one prospect heading into the Braves' number one prospect heading into next year. But so that's a guy I'm really excited to see.
I really like Yadier Alvarez too. That's a guy I'm interested in. I did a lot of comparisons when we signed Manning for whatever reason. Maybe it was somebody on Twitter was kind of asking me which one I like better, and I actually kind of like Manning better. But Yadier Alvarez is a pretty interesting looking young pitcher who's got a lot of gas, pretty smooth, easy delivery, and he just looks like he could get a lot bigger and stronger and really have something there. And because it's the Dodgers, you tend to give him like a half point bump on just about everything anyway.
Yeah, no, he's a guy that I was really interested to see too, because like you said, this is one of the hardest throwing starters in the minors. He's up there with like Michael Kopech, who's now in the White Sox. I think
pretty great breaking ball too, at least at times. I'm sure it's not consistent yet, but when I've seen him snap off a good one in some videos, it was pretty evil looking.
So I was just listening to a Baseball America podcast last week, I think it was, and they were actually kind of down on him, which kind of shocked me. And I don't exactly remember all the criticism, but there was some thought again of him not being able to locate the breaking balls and stuff like that. But still, this is you give that guy as much time as he needs, because he, like you said, it's a free and easy high 90s fastball.
And he still looks like a little weak in the legs. He kind of looks like Anthony Castro to me a little bit on the mound. Actually, if anybody pays attention to Tigers prospects, then will know what that kind of looks like, but without kind of the same stability that you'd like to see. But he's 6'3". I mean, he's probably only like 180, 190 or something right now. So there's room for him to kind of build up. He's got a little bit of tilt, which sometimes puts people off, but so does Bo Burrows and plenty of other people. You can't pick too much into those little details like that. As I've learned, I thought I had a really good read on like what great mechanics should look like, and then you just keep seeing guys come up to the majors with all kinds of garbage looking mechanics and just do great. You just never know. You have no idea. Everybody's body's different. That's what that tells me.
Yeah, no, it's give me the arm, figure things out later. And so we basically just broke down half of the world.
There's a lot of guys who are interesting here. Like, I mean, if people pay attention to prospects, just in general, I'm not, nearly as versed as you guys are, and I'm just like, oh yeah, Purdue goes in there, oh great, yeah. So it's a long list of people you'll be familiar with if you do kind of pay any attention to the draft or high end prospects out there.
Yeah, and so like the U.S. prospects, I think the world prospect list is a little bit more interesting, but there's still a ton of talent in the U.S. You talked about Burrows. There's some other pitchers that mentioned Michael Kopech, who might be the hardest throwing starter in minors. He's was a big piece of the Chris Sale deal, along with Moncada.
Yeah, that deal is well represented right here. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's also Tristan McKenzie, who's a guy that I really like, who I really wanted the Tigers to get him 2 years ago. He was a really tall, skinny, like 6'5", like 160-pound kid who was committed to Vanderbilt, I think, and it seemed like nobody was going to draft him just because he had a strong commitment. But then the Indians went and did it. And I think they took him in like the second round or the compensation round or whatever. And he's just been dominating so far in the minors, and he's still, I think, only 19, still super skinny. That's the one issue. He hasn't put on much weight, but he knows how to pitch, and it'll be interesting to see. I think if anybody knows who like Carl Edwards Jr. is, the Cubs, he's like that level skinny.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. But again, I mentioned another Indians prospect. It's kind of a bummer that they've got prospects and are pretty good.
I thought when they traded Clint Frazier, they were supposed to be done, but no, they got one.
And there are a couple of Phillies prospects who really interest me. Rhys Hoskins is I touched a little bit earlier on that right-hitting, right-throwing first baseman. You have to hit a ton.
Yeah. And
Rhys Hoskins is doing that, but he still has skeptics. He's 24. He's leading the minors or leading AAA in home runs and RBIs and all that good stuff, hitting over 300. But there are people out there who say he can't hit breaking balls. So I want to see him. I want to see him get some really good pitchers to see what he looks like.
Yeah.
And then the other Phillies guy is a guy named Scott Kingery, who I really wanted the Tigers to take in the second round, I think, 2 years ago.
Mm.
I need to go. Well, I think they ended up taking Kristen Stewart. So I mean, it's not.
Oh yeah, in the comp round, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But I can't complain too much. But I need to go back and see if I tweeted about it so I can make myself feel even smarter. Even though it's totally just it's obviously just kind of luck.
But we're so wrong. When you are right, you really need to remember it.
Yeah, that's right. You make yourself look smart. But he's a guy who's broken out in a huge way this year. Before this year, he had 8 home runs. He's a second baseman with plus speed and plus hitting ability. That's all I wanted from him. I'm like,
yeah,
he can play second base. He can hit the ball, and he's fast. Draft him.
Yeah.
I want somebody like that.
Yeah, please. You can play him wherever.
And that's basically who he was up until this year. So I think, let's see, he started. Yeah, so he was hitting 250, 290 last year, 26 steals, and then this year he's just gone bonkers in Double-A, which is he plays for the Phillies, and their Double-A park is well known for being a launching pad.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
But he's hitting on the road too, and so in 69 games in Double-A this year, he hit 313 with 18 homers and 19 steals. And like I said, he's a second baseman who can play defense there.
Wow.
So they bumped him up to Triple-A. They're like, all right, let's see what happens. And in his second game, he hit 2 homers. So it's like, all right, he's going to be 2020. He's a 2020 player already before the Futures game. So now I think you got to be a little bit cautious about guys. You don't project guys to hit this much power in the pros.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean. That's kind of the game, right? You find these guys and it looks incredible, and then it's just like that last little bit is always the crux. I mean, just based on that, that's a guy who has the ability, but yeah, you just have to see how he can put it together. But I do the same thing. I get super excited, and then I start having to do that that dance where I'm like, okay, but settle down.
Yeah, no, for sure, that's one of those things where you see the numbers and you go crazy, and then you gotta see him go do it in the majors. But that's definitely another guy I want to see in action. And then his double play partner should be pretty fun. Bo Bichette Jr. and Brendan Rodgers.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So you got a guy hitting 400 in low A ball, and I think Brendan Rodgers set some sort of bizarre record for hitting in high A ball. He was playing in Lancaster, which is the worst possible stadium ever for hitting. And I mean worst as in like you can't tell anything from the stats. It's just an absolute.
Everything can go out.
Yeah, there's 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts and high altitude. And guys are hitting he hit like 450 at home there.
Yeah.
But yes, I don't know. I mean, I could talk about these prospects all day.
419, 700 line. Yeah.
Last year, pretty good for a guy who can play shortstop.
Yep. Wow.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm super excited about the Futures game, like I am every year, and I could talk about these prospects all day, but I don't know if anybody really wants to listen to that. So,
well, we can turn it back to the Tigers real briefly, just to say that Derek Hill is back. Derek Hill is taking swings, and he's probably going to be a lot lower on prospect list than he used to be, but that's still like the one guy that you can look at in the from A ball and above, who really looks like he does have the ability to be an impact position player if he can hit, and that's still the question. But Derek Hill does not have to hit very much to be useful to this team in Comerica Park, so that's a guy to keep an eye on. Once again, he's back in the fold, so I'm happy to see that. Seems like a great kid.
Yeah.
I talked to a few coaches who knew him growing up. Like everybody has great things to say about him always, so. Just hope he can stay healthy, and we can kind of get a read on him with some consistency there. Get some reps, kid.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think his first game he stole 3 bases. I mean, he's got 2 legitimate plus or better tools in his speed and his defense. And before his Tommy John surgery, his arm was even a little bit above average. So, Like you said, get him to hit a little bit. We don't even need power so much. Yeah, you get him some playing time, keep him healthy, let him hit, and that glove and those wheels are going to get him to the majors if he can just move along, at a decent pace. So that is, I still think there's the ceiling of a everyday regular there, but time will tell.
Yep, just needs that development time and a little better bat speed and control and a little more strength. There's a lot to do there, but it's not out of reach. So hope is not yet lost.
Yeah, just like with the Tiger season.
I don't know if I'd compare. Maybe the odds are about as good, honestly.
Well, maybe. I'd like to think that Derek Hill has a better chance of pulling it out than the Tigers do, but
yeah, I don't really give the Tigers any chance at this point either. It's like we talked about to wrap it all back around to the beginning, is that it's just going to be an interesting road because the team isn't going to change that much in the next month, but there's going to be just an unbelievable amount of talk. There's going to be a lot of talk, and we'll just see how they can do on the field. Hopefully Norris can find a little bit of that groove again. We haven't seen it at all this year, and yeah, I'm still expecting Verlander to just go nuts at some point and just dominate everybody for a few months. So
his curveball the last couple outings, he seems to have found the curveball again. I think he got 7 swings and misses on it in his last start against the Royals, and probably a dozen or more against the Mariners in that the strange perfect game that wasn't. I think and we lament a little bit right now that there doesn't seem to be much of a trade market, but they always materialize. We mentioned earlier Trey Turner injured. Guys get injured. Strange things happen. Somebody gets popped for PEDs. Yep.
Somebody goes on a winning streak and suddenly feels like they're okay. I'm really in this, and somebody else loses 5 in a row and they're out. And there's
it happens.
Happen. This actually might be the most interesting month of the season for Tiger fans, the next month. So try to hang in there for one more month, people. Then you can chill out and watch, Lions training camp or whatever.
Ooh, wrong. Listen to baseball podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I'll be listening to baseball contests and switching over to watching movies and Game of Thrones. So.
Oh, God, yeah, Game of Thrones coming on. I think that's more than enough baseball for today. We can talk about pop culture, or we can just get the hell out of here.
Okay, we can just both admit that we're excited for Game of Thrones, and I don't really want to spoil it any more than I've already spoiled it by looking around the internet. But man, I am stoked. Yeah. It's been too long.
Yeah, only thing I've seen is the 2 trailers, or 2 of the trailers. I don't know if there are more than that, but pretty excited. I never read the books. Have you?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Many times over too. Yeah.
You are a literary gentleman.
Yeah, to some degree. Yeah, it's true. Not as much as I used to be. But yeah, I saw the first 2 seasons and was like, all right, I don't really read fantasy apart from Lord of the Rings, but I'll give it a shot. And well, baby, I mean, they're huge, and I just went down deep. It was it was just like reading the Dune series for the first time or something, where I just could not stop. I mean, they really are crack on paper. So if anybody's looking for a way to kill 40 hours, any one of those books will do it.
Yeah, no, it's I know it's one of those things where I'd like to pick them up and read them and get kind of geeky with them, but I just
got a life and stuff probably.
Well, even when I didn't have a kid and stuff, I didn't read as much as I'd like to, unfortunately. Love to write, and reading would make me a much better writer, but
it's hard to do all of it. It just
baseball to watch.
Yep, exactly. Yep, prospects to watch and babies to raise.
Yeah.
And with that, we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, good. Thanks again, Brandon, for filling in here. I know Roger would like to have you back every week. We'll figure some things out. And
it's been a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm open to maybe not every week, but yeah, I'll be checking in. Don't worry, I'll check in.
Yeah. As always, though, is there anything you got coming up? Bless you, boys. Anything interesting?
For me personally, no. Our guy Kyle Yost wrote a cool thing today though about what the Tigers would need to do to contend, and that's kind of where that topic came from. Was
all right.
Yeah, just based on that. So I'll give him some shouts there, and I will, after a week of school and misery, I will start writing again. So here we go.
And I should have a Q&A with Austin Sodders up tomorrow on Tigstown, or today, whenever you hear the podcast. So,
right on.
So that's it for us. So, all right, yeah, thanks, and we'll everybody have a good 4th of July holiday. Don't blow your hands up.
Yeah, don't blow your fingers off, people. Take it easy.
Yeah. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Good night.